Hey nerds, welcome to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. This week we had episode 3 and we got, I think some really more like solid information about the state of things in the future. And there's a lot going on here that really set the stage. Now I gotta say, I like the pacing. This is something that they started last season with the pods, but because they're not trying to drag one story out through the entire season, the pacing is so much better. It just feels like stuff is happening every episode. So I like that right off the bat. But things that happened this week. First, we got some great just references to the wider MCU or comics, things like that first. And the one that I think everyone caught right away is Location 616. This was that giant dead piece of rock out in space that was really being used as a mirror to reflect a radio signal. But 616, for those who aren't aware, is the universe designation for the main Marvel Comics continuity. So all of the comics everyone's familiar with, that you know, the universe that started it all, that's Universe 616. So that's what that reference was to. The other great thing about this is we have Deke trying to explain the multiverse theory to Daisy, and she's not having it because she's smarter than him, and we all know that. So that was just a nice moment. But it does give us an idea of how they're explaining time travel, and that for some reason when they the future they are in is not necessarily the future of their Earth. So this is kind of, I feel like this is the same idea of the Dragon Ball Z timeline, where when Trunks goes back in time, he creates an alternate timeline, and it's not going to change his timeline, so it's a separate universe. All of that to be said, those things were pretty great. Now, the next thing that I think was significant, and please let me know if I'm wrong, but it felt like we got a better idea of what the Lighthouse is. Now, last week, I think I was talking about how it looked like some sort of water plant or some sort of earth-based plant that had to do with water or maybe sewage or something like that. And I was really confused how they could convert that into a space station. Well, if I'm understanding what we saw this week correctly, it wasn't converted into a space station. It's still just strapped to the side of the Earth, and that when it was broken apart, imagine cutting the Earth in half, and you can see this station, whatever is, you know, like veins or like roots going down into the Earth's crust, and it just so happens that where the crust split is where this facility was. Now, there might be something to that. It might just be that this just happened to be where the location is. Maybe there was some plot to actually break the Earth apart by the Kree or something. We don't know. We are going to learn what actually happened to the Earth. I don't think it's Daisy. I don't think her powers were responsible for this, unless we get something like is often used in the comics, where there's some device that was used to amplify a person's abilities. Magneto used this countless times to amplify his powers. So it's possible maybe the Kree did set up these different outposts and captured Daisy and used her like a tuning fork to crack the world open. All that to be said, the Lighthouse doesn't appear to be a space station in the traditional sense of the term, but was this plant that is still kind of dug into the Earth. It's just that half of it is exposed to space. That also explains how the guy gets onto the surface of the world where the roaches are so easily. They probably just had to open a door and kick him out. Now, to the bigger things that happened this week, we learned about who the aliens were that were visiting. We learned why they're there and some things like that. So first, who were the aliens that were visiting? They are more likely than not pink-skinned Kree. Now, pink-skinned Kree, or sometimes referred to as white Kree, but generally they're referred to as pink-skinned Kree. They are from the comics, and at one point in the Kree evolutionary process, they were tampering with their genetic code, and it's a little complicated, but they began to stagnate. And in an attempt to further develop their species, this is when the pink-skinned Kree were kind of born. I don't know how you would say that, but they're similar in appearance to Caucasians, so that's kind of why we're seeing this. And eventually, the pink-skinned Kree outnumbered the blue-skinned Kree and kind of took over. And that's, I think, the point we're seeing right here is that the pink-skinned Kree have taken over, and that's why Lady Basha, who we don't know anything about yet, is in charge. And she's treated like royalty or a dignitary, whereas Cassius, who we thought was important, is really very low on the totem pole. Now, what is Cassius's plan with Abby the Inhuman? Well, first, Abby, an Inhuman, we learned that this week, with density changing abilities. She can change the density. Think Vision from Avengers. If you remember some of his abilities, he could phase out, or if you're more familiar with DC, Martian Manhunter. They both have this kind of density changing ability. It's a fairly common ability in comics, not just Marvel, but in other places. But there's no character that is an Inhuman with that name that matches, so I think she's just kind of this one-off character. They wanted an Inhuman, and they didn't want to use any named character, so that's fine. But that's kind of who she is. That I don't expect to see her after this last week. But what was Cassius's plan? Why was he selling this Inhuman? Well, I feel like the entire reason for his outpost is to mine Inhumans. He's not mining scrap from the planet. That's just kind of an excuse and a way to kind of discover any humans that might have the latent Inhuman gene. I think that is what is going on here. I think his plan is find Inhumans, mine them, and then sell them to pink-skinned Kree. And I think that's what we see happen. And the reason I'm pretty sure Cassius is doing this is he wants to go home. He wants to go back to Hala, and the only way he can do that is he has to buy his way back. He has to prove his worth. He has to have accomplished something out here, and that's what he's doing. He's mining these Inhumans for sale to essentially the Kree royalty, which are the pink-skinned Kree currently. So that's, I think, what his plan is. I think that's the overall goal he has and why he's looking for Inhumans. It also explains, how Yo-Yo and Daisy are going to be in a lot of danger, especially Daisy now that she has been discovered. But we'll get to that in a minute. Now, the planet. The signal that Coulson and everyone found, and they've discovered it's coming from Earth. There's really only two possibilities for who this could be. One, it is a group that is working with Fitz. If Fitz is still alive, again, this is 90 years in the future. I suppose it's possible, but more likely than not, it's a group he set up or began working with. The other possibility is this is that alien that actually sent them to the future. We don't know what species the alien is, so we don't know how long they live. It's possible the two groups are actually together, but we don't know. But those are my two guesses on who is actually still on Earth. In some way, it is going to have to do with Fitz, because we know he's going to come into this at some point. But I think the possibility of him still being alive is a bit of a stretch. Last thing, Daisy. So Daisy's making her attempt to free Gemma, and she's caught because she's ratted out by Deke. What do you guys think? Do you think he's playing the long game like he says? And is his long game just self-preservation, or is he really trying to save Daisy and he thinks this was helping her? I'm not sure. I think he doesn't even know. I think he is playing both sides, and he's going to try and pick the winning side. And he's probably going to try and spin this like this was the only way to save you. You were walking into a trap, something like that. But I don't know about Deke. I don't have a good feeling about him. So, what did you guys think of the episode? Where do you think the show's going? Do you agree with me about Cassius that he's mining Inhumans? What do you think? Do you think everyone's right? Because this is kind of the general consensus that it is pink-skinned Kree. I think that makes the most sense. What are your thoughts, and where do you think this is going? So until next time, guys, I'm Brian from Good Nerd, Bad Nerd, and this has been Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies.